Edge. What is its point? Is there value within shock value beyond the satisfaction of appalling an audience? Is there more to it? What is the correct amount of edge? When does an edgy work cross the line from brooding and reflective into absurd and hilarious? I think there are two works that exemplify this talking point. The legendary manga Berserk and the legendarily lauded video game Shadow the Hedgehog. While Berserk uses its dark nature to convey its theming and characterization, Shadow the Hedgehog simply wants to appeal those who seek out edgy content, the edgelords of the world, if you will. Berserk's legacy will live on in glory even after the death of creator Kentaro Miura. Shadow the Hedgehog will be looked back at as a blemish on the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise as a gross miscalculation. Then, you find that odd middle ground. That line between something that's edgy just for the sake of it, and also trying to say something through said edge at the same time. For some, that perfect example may be a webcomic about a Grim Reaper rabbit furry. It's been far too long. Welcome to Season 2 of Infamous Webcomics. Jack. So, when I select these comics for these Infamous Webcomics episodes, one might be resigned to the idea that I select ones of poor quality only. This is, however, not true. One who had watched Season 1 would already know my praises for the Zootopia abortion comic, Boyfriends, and even the heartfelt passion behind Lightbringer. It's me, I'm Lightbringer. Alright, that's enough of that, alright? So, you may ask, what exactly are my criteria for selecting webcomics for an episode of IW? Simple, really. It either has gained notoriety through its poor quality, or it is of poor quality, such as Moon Over June. There's been a massive negative reaction to it throughout the internet, such as the case for Boyfriends. There may have been a potential crime committed, such as Bench Tales. The lore around the creator or the creation of it makes it more interesting, such as the Loco Bandito and Sonichu, or it's highly divisive, like today's comic. Jack by David Hopkins seems to either rub people the wrong way or just hit the nail on the head for them. It is a story one could dismiss as edgelord cringe or praise as social commentary. I suppose it depends on one thing. How do you feel about furries? No, but really, I swear this wouldn't have gained as much infamy if it wasn't a furry comic. There's just something about furries being edgy that just makes the serious tone lose its luster in a lot of people. I, however, can look past it and try to read beyond the furry edgelords. That is my mission statement, more or less. No matter how nihilistic or sardonic my reviews may come off, I truly do try to give these comics a fair review. Be them the likes of Mega Milk or even Control-Alt-Delete. I try to read them dead serious. And to be honest, going into Jack, I wasn't quite sure what to expect, especially considering it is well over 2,000 pages long. Holy shit, dude. Granted, due to its overwhelming length, I will only be reviewing the first 10 arcs for this episode. I am, unfortunately, still operating on a timeline. I know a lot of you wouldn't mind waiting for a comprehensive video, but YouTube would. However, if there's enough demand, we can even branch this out into a sub-series reviewing the entire story. As for now, allow me to read the synopsis. I briefly covered this back in the webcomics iceberg, but I will reiterate it now. Here is the quote. Jack is set in a world populated by anthropomorphic animals. Jack focuses on its title character, a wizened green rabbit who lives in hell. He is the embodiment of the deadly sin Wrath, whose punishment is being the Grim Reaper. Comic created by David Hopkins. I should note that this comic started in the year 2000. That's right, we got one that's 26 years old. It is also finished. The mythical finished webcomic. Amazing. Let's get into Mr. Hopkins' story. Well, where else to begin than at the beginning? I will say that before I start giving my initial chunk of plot summary, this one actually surprised me. Going into it, I expected edgelord cringe. I mean, that kind of was there, but I don't mean that 2014 to 2017 YouTubers saying slurs edge. I'm referring more to that early 2000s Newgrounds style edge. Something that would make the, cancel culture mobs, as they are often referred to, have a conniption of epic proportions. Apologies for using a buzzword phrase. I have a tendency to avoid those, but highly sensitive crowd, you know what I mean? That doesn't seem to fit this group of people I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about. The people that bitch and moan about everything. Everything's offensive. That group of people. Anyway, as for the rest of us, the ones that can handle dark and disturbing subject matter without batting an eye, I might actually recommend giving this a shot. Now, just before I get into the story of this comic in the next paragraph, I will allow those who are actually quite sensitive and are for some reason still watching a content warning, all of them. All of the content warnings, yep. Whatever you may be thinking when it comes to how far it goes, it does in fact go there, so brace yourself. Alright, there's even some bench tail stuff in there, okay? You know what I'm saying? Like, prepare yourself if you are going to read this. Arc 1, Finar the Unborn. This is a short and simple arc meant to introduce two characters, the titular... I just said tit. The titular Jack and Finar, who makes appearances throughout the series, often when we visit Hell. The story takes place across Heaven, Hell, Earth, and even Purgatory. Of course, all furry versions of them. So Finar is an unborn fetus that is aborted in the first few pages. Yeah, hell of an opening, huh? His mother does not survive the operation. Jack, the main character, acts as the Reaper for both Finar and his mother. Despite being the physical manifestation of the deadly sin of wrath, Jack seems to be empathetic to the souls he takes, be they victims of tragedies or unfortunate circumstances. It really makes you question what he did in life to become one of the sins if it's so clear deep down the guy has a heart. He even allows Finar to meet his mother. As for his origin story, I have read the first 10 arcs and there was only a brief hint so far as to what condemned him to become a Grim Reaper. I suppose if I pick it back up, I'll find out eventually. But that's the first arc, a short introductory one. Due to Finar technically never being born, Hell has no effect on him, and he is free to do as he pleases down there. He will appear periodically throughout the story, often in these mini-arcs Hopkins created between full arcs dubbed shorts. But before we get to those, we need to talk about one of the more standout arcs I have read going through the series. Arc 2, Angry Brine. So this arc is one that makes me think more about the time period it was created in. Nowadays, here in America, mass shootings are rampant. It's almost every other week you hear about a national tragedy when someone gets their hands on a gun and just goes psycho. Almost as commonplace as apple pie here in the great US of A. But this comic was released in 2000. The Columbine school shooting had only happened a year prior, and we were a few years away from incidents like Virginia Tech that would seemingly normalize these tragedies in American culture, so I can understand at the time of creation this one arc might have shocked some. So in it, we follow Brian. But before we do, I should note at a certain point this specific arc was redrawn. I read the redrawn version mostly because I was using the Comic Fury upload and I just wanted to read it all in one place rather than digging around old GeoCities and Angel Fire sites. I mean, I like doing ancient internet investigation, but sometimes it's a huge pain in the ass. Anyway, more on the artwork in the art review segment. Let's get back to Brian. Brian is mad as hell and he's not going to take it anymore. Why? Because they all laughed at him at school. And that's enough for some people to pick up a gun and start shooting indiscriminately. For some people, the kinds of people who do these clearly being a bit on the psychologically unhinged side, that's all it takes. And Brian here was one of them. He kills a bunch of students, but is stopped by a character called the NRA Preacher amongst the school. It seems that Hopkins may have wanted to illustrate that the only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun, but I may be reading too much into it, and I try to tiptoe around political issues. Anyway, back to the story. Brian realizes he's dead. Jack shows up and tells him it's time to go. Brian flees. The other people that have died are standing in the veil with him. They realize that Brian is trying to escape and help Jack catch him. Brian is then sentenced to be strung up and mocked for all eternity. A sea of demons laughing at him till the end of time. The very thing that drove him over the edge. I really liked this arc. I did feel at times, just jumping ahead, the writing style could feel a tad bit preachy. Hopkins even made some self-referential mockery in the 10th arc about this. It's highly likely that he got some feedback like this at the time, but this one felt like a delicate balance between the edgelord I've grown to know and the often obfuscated literary message of it all. Goes around, comes around, bitch. In Hopkins' own words, bummer, Brian. So, there's a few one-off strips between arcs as I mentioned earlier, mostly revolving around Finar exploring Hell, and we got one where a man is getting violated by dolphins. Granted, dolphins do, in fact, at times, try to diddle people. That's some crazy shit. Go read up on John C. Lilly, or better yet, go check out Atrocity Guide's video on it. Great channel. There's a little shout out if you never saw our stuff. Check it out. Anyway, dolphin diddlers. Yeah, edgelord cringe. Whatever. Who cares? Let's move on. Arc 3. Trixie and Tet. This one is more sad than edgy. It's actually a pretty simple plot, but honestly quite heartfelt, albeit a bit rough around the edges in terms of technical execution of the comic. But, as always, I separate the story and art into their own segments. So Trixie and Tet are a loving couple, but Trixie gets sick. Really sick. Hospitalized. Tet worries and worries, visits her every day, brings her flowers, never leaves her side. Her time is almost up. Jack uses his cosmic powers to let Tet enter Trixie's dreams and see her full of life one last time before she goes. Trixie passes. Tet is racked with sorrow. Tet grows old, and one day Jack finally shows up to take him to judgment. When he reaches the end of the line, he's presented with an empty room from a cloaked figure. Tet assumes he's in hell, but it was a prank. The hooded figure reveals herself to be Trixie, simply stating she couldn't stand to start building her heaven without him, with one last panel in color. This was a good arc, at least insofar as story is concerned. The technical execution is rough, but when I reached the end of this one, I realized why some people actually like this comic. While on the surface it may appear as an edgelord's paradise, which it kind of is, underneath it lies something more sincere, and this arc exemplified that for me. We have a few shorts before the next arc, but there is one important one. Finar's adventures aren't really that relevant, but the brief details about Drip, the physical embodiment of the deadly sin of lust, explain his depravity in more detail. He commits his sins, which I'll leave to your imagination, yet feels no pleasure from them. A fitting punishment. Then we move along to Arc 4, now with color, for a while at least. It seems at a certain point Hopkins went back and updated old arcs, but not all of them. I like his colored art more because it's easier to read, but the grungy black and white aesthetic seems to fit the vibe of the series more. I don't know, I guess it's kind of a pick your poison situation. Let's get to the next arc. Arc 4. Falling Angels. We are introduced to a new recurring character in this arc named Farago. She is a falling angel. The story is about a plane being forcibly crashed in a field. Published a few months before a particular historic event, and YouTube autoflags videos for naming. Although I do think this video most likely is demonetized for talking about school shootings already, so yeah, 9/11. You know, a few months before that. Do your worst, YouTube. But you, dear viewer, I'd appreciate a like, comment, subscribe, and if you're feeling a little spicy today, perhaps a hype from my mobile viewers. Why isn't that feature on desktop? Huh, YouTube? Anyway, enough bitching about YouTube. There's plenty of time for that later. Anyway, Jack and Farago meet up in a field and they realize that the plane crash isn't supposed to happen. We follow the perspective of a bunch of nerds on their way to a furry convention. And this was 2001, so you know Hopkins was an OG furry. My dude probably has a goddamn Fritz the Cat shrine. We'll talk about Robert Crumb on the channel one day. Anyway, shit goes sideways, the plane goes down. I actually quite like the page where the plane is about to hit the ground, and he put this like soft edge blackness on the bottom half of the page. I always appreciate outside of the box paneling like that. After sending the dead to their next life, Farago and Jack investigate the plane crash and realize the other sins, gluttony, were the cause of it. I like how they're twins, emphasizing the concept of excess, much like the deadly sin of gluttony is supposed to be. Jack sends them back to hell, and Farago gives her thanks. There's a brief flash of Jack's past that he has sworn not to remember, pushing it away, and out of context it's kind of funny, so I put it in the thumbnail. Hopefully. The word kill might hurt it. I don't know. I fucking hate YouTube. Anyway, I've been bitching about YouTube a lot in this segment. Anyway, Farago and Jack, they part ways, and that's the end of the arc. Two more shorts. Finar is informed his father is in hell, but that it's likely they'll never meet. Foreshadowing, probably. There's some social commentary, and then we're on to Arc 5. Arc 5. Dinner at Arloist's. I thought this arc was pretty mid, to be honest. Didn't really have much in it for me. So we actually get a bit of backstory on Drip, the sin of lust. In the living world, he abducted and did things that the word lust might imply to this arc's main character, Arloist. She ended up ending it all and was sentenced to hell for that. I suppose Hopkins believed people that end things themselves go to hell. I feel like that one might be up for some philosophical debate, but it might get political, and I don't want to get political. So let's just say self-deletion in this universe sends you to hell, okay? Arloist has the ability to see the future, useless in hell because time flows differently. Drip is there too, of course. Part of Drip's punishment is not being able to violate those he violated in life, so he makes a deal with Arloist. She gets to live again for a limited time with her future sight, and Drip gets to do whatever he wants with her when she returns to hell. In her last hour, she uses her ability to write up fortune cookies that all tell the truth about the future. Oh yeah, this one's set in a diner. I probably should have said that first. Anyway, she warns two couples about an impending major accident, and only one listens to it. The other one dies. Drip then claims his prize. Jack reluctantly hands her over. And that's the arc. I wasn't really feeling this one. We get a few shorts and a bonus arc as it's labeled, but I'd recommend reading it for continuity's sake. As for the shorts, the one important one is where we're introduced to another angel. This one is complete with wings, called Central. She will be appearing again. We also have Finar at the races. We just get a glimpse at Hell's Coliseum, presided over by Vince, the physical embodiment of the deadly sin of greed. Just some torture and death and all the edginess you've grown to know from reading Jack. Other than character introductions, there's not that much to it. So let's take a little detour and talk about the artwork. So, The artwork of infamous webcomic Jack. How is it? A bit rough, at least at first. It seems the style and technique vary from arc to arc, but that might just be Hopkins going back and redrawing older pages. I get that, but it's also hard to pinpoint certain moments in artistic evolution. This comic is presented in a mostly black and white style. Stylistically speaking, it feels more in the vein of underground comics. That's comics with an X. I'll do a video about it someday. More so that than something like manga, which is one might associate with black and white styles. I actually do feel a bit of like Robert Crumb coming through these pages, a pivotal figure in the world of underground comics. Again, Robert Crumb video, underground comics video at some point, okay? But yeah, there's a little bit of Crumb in there when he really leans into the more like hatching and heavy blacks. But when he adds color, some of the detail is a bit lost and we have a more smooth feel to the art. There are some issues with paneling, at least earlier on in the story. The word balloons feel like they dominate the page. It's not so much like a wall of text problem, it's more of a layout problem. While Jack can get a bit wordy at times, they never feel assaulted by the dialogue, but the actual balloons. Like, the design of the word balloons feel like an afterthought, or at least the layout of them and their positions. Remember to always lay out your pages with word balloon placement in mind. There are also occasions of the colored pages where the color bleeds a little into the balloon. I'm not sure how he colored these back in the early 2000s, unless he had like Photoshop back then, an early version maybe. Or if there was some other software at the time. Some of these pages do look hand colored, like the first arc. It's just a bit inconsistent. If I jump all the way to the end, because I don't care about spoilers and neither should you, things have improved a lot. The outlines on characters have become chunkier and the color got more sleek. Panel design doesn't feel disoriented like it did back in the Trixie and Tet arc, and there's even shading. It looks pretty damn good. I mean, it is furries though, so I guess if you have a problem with that, I mean, well then, fair? I don't know. I can look past it. I know some people just don't like anything with furries in it. The art definitely got better, but I kind of wish he went for a more like middle ground between the color and the more detailed black and white art. I feel like this series works better in black and white with all the grungy details, but art is subjective. If you read it, what do you think about the art? Well, let's get a little bit more story review in then, shall we? Arc 6, for no apparent reason. This arc is honestly just filler, bro. At the end of Finar at the races, Finar asks his Uncle Greed to play tag. He runs into the human world somehow and comes across two bystanders. They help him escape the monster who's chasing him, but when Greed catches up, Finar is it. The other two guys are just confused. That's it. It is in color, though. Next arc, Arc 7, all work and no play. This arc is kind of a redux of the Angry Brian arc in my opinion. Only 7 arcs in and already repeating yourself, huh? The only difference is that it's a workplace shooting. The art style returns to black and white in this one, but I actually like how it's shifted. There's more grays implemented to make the panels easier to read. So, guy goes nuts and shoots everyone at work, but unique to this arc, we actually see it from the perspective of the first few victims that are waiting in the veil for the killings to end. At a certain point, one of them realizes that they can manage to affect the physical world if they put their mind to it. They do so and force the killer to shoot himself. However, one of the ghosts that acted on revenge rather than stopping the killing is sentenced to hell. After this event, Jack consorts with Central, the angel. Remember I said we'd be seeing her again? Anyway, Jack asks the angel why the man that helped stop the killer was sentenced to hell. Central gives a corporate response. I suppose Hopkins wanted to pose the question to those who do bad things for good reasons. Do they deserve to be punished for them? An interesting ethical debate, and one I don't want to get into. We'll be here all day. This arc was okay, but it kind of felt like a retreading of the Angry Brian arc. Short after this shows Farago in hell visiting Finar, his existence piquing her interest. Then on to the next arc, one of the strongest ones in the 10 I read. Arc 8, Games We Play in Hell. We followed the daily life of someone condemned to hell. She works at the Coliseum. I'm gonna be honest, I don't think I can really describe what goes down in this arc. It's pretty rough. I know so far, for those who aren't that sensitive to darker subject matter, you're most likely dismissive of the edginess, but this arc, well, this video is highly likely demonetized, but I'll still try to avoid that. Let's just say what Drip wants to go down in the Coliseum is really, really, really bad. At a certain point, Silverblue, the MC of this arc, I probably should have told you that, ends up delivering a letter with Finar to one of the Twin Towers. Apparently, one tower went to heaven and the other went to hell. I don't know what Hopkins meant by this, but does that mean Building 7 went to purgatory? You guys do remember Building 7, right? right? What about that chunk of the Pentagon? Anyway, before I get on a list, back to the story. They actually deliver the message to Arloes. Yeah, some of the other characters do in fact come back in the story. There is a continuity forming, and this isn't a strictly episodic comic. At a certain point, Jack tells Silverblue that she's reliving her last day on Earth over and over in an endless time loop. I suppose an exaggerated, hellish version of it, and the only way to stop it is to remember and make different decisions. She keeps suppressing her trauma from rising up. She decides to face her past and overcome her trauma to redeem herself and potentially to be brought up to heaven. I like this more hopeful take that even in hell one can be redeemed. This is probably the second best arc I read, but boy, was that Colosseum scene like, holy fucking shit. Like, I cannot tell you what went down in Drip's game. Read at your own risk. For some reason, them being very soft in the blow for me. I don't know why. Anyway, this was one of the better arcs, a few filler shorts, and then on to the next arc. Arc 9, the mark has been made. We have a pretty short one up next, and I think this is actually setting something up for later down the line. We see an unnamed fox girl cleaning out her attic, but she keeps having traumatic visions of Drip back when he was still alive. I'm assuming she was one of his victims, and considering the dialogue claiming this is the anniversary of Drip's death as well. There's not much more to it than that, but this one actually has quite nice art. The paneling one in a more interesting direction, and the full color pages are nice. And it sort of hits that middle ground between the more hatched black and white style and sleek color style that I wanted. There are over 50 arcs to this story, so I presumably will revisit the Fox Girl at some point, hopefully having overcome her traumas. One more arc, and that's as far as I go with this one, unless there's some kind of overwhelming demand for me to revisit it. If you want that, you should already know what to do. Like, comment, subscribe. You guys ain't been hitting the like button enough lately. Channel growth has been slowing. Like, come on already. Hit the damn buttons. We got Zoophobia up next, for Christ's sakes. Anyway, next arc. Arc 10, Suffer. Oh boy. This one's a doozy. Or should I say a ditty. Yeah, it goes there. I told you, it would go as far as you thought it would, but even farther. So, oh boy, alright. So this one is actually the one I mentioned earlier that's full of self-referential digs. It was a bit excessive by the end of it, but it got me to blow some air out of my nose. This story is about Dr. Thalamus and Art, also Art's sick wife Sue. Art gets a job with Dr. Thalamus in a hospital researching cures for cancer. Art's wife has the specific type of cancer they're researching. There are also sick children in this ward. That detail is unfortunately very important. So everything's fine. Everyone loves Dr. Thalamus and they're making progress. Art even makes friends with the kids and reads them to sleep when he's there. Sue's condition worsens as the story progresses. One day Art finds Dr. Thalamus engaged in Epstein-like activities. Let's just leave it at that. Dr. Thalamus coerces Art into covering for him by threatening to pull the plug on the research, knowing full well that said research could save his wife. Art makes the doctor swear he'll never do it again. He does it again. The doctor's plans are revealed shortly after he kills some of the kids. He was going to frame Art for his crimes, but before he can even figure out what to do, he gets a call from the hospital Sue is at. Sue dies. Art decides that he's going to call the police, lying to Dr. Thalamus that he's going to take the fall. He tells the police everything, including that he covered it up. We fast forward, the doctor is sentenced to death. Art continues the research and even makes some breakthroughs. He gets visited by one of the victims he helped in his twilight years and soon after dies of a heart attack. Jack appears as he does and explains that he will not be the one to take him across the veil. That falls to Sky, an entity that wards souls into purgatory, a place much like Earth. And that concludes the arc in the first bit of Jack that I read. This comic gained infamy for its over-the-top edginess, but I don't want to dismiss it as edgelord cringe. I swear I said edgelord like 90 times in this review, I'm sorry. I feel like there was a bit of a deeper, more sincere point to this series. Having jumped to the end to see the art evolution in its final form, I think the point is that even in hell one can redeem themselves, or perhaps, maybe, Hopkins wanted to pose the question, how far does one truly have to go to become irredeemable? Well, still a better redemption story than Shadow of the Conqueror by Jazz's brother. Let's read some reviews! Oh hey, there are physical copies, what do you know? As usual, it seems TV Tropes has the most discussion about it. Some of these reviews are quite old, though. I'm also not seeing Doomstayer over there still. Like, come on guys, get to work. Anyway, let's get into the reviews. Ibn Fadland says, Jack is an extremely insightful and dark look at the afterlife. Don't be fooled by the animal cast and drawing style, this comic is as disturbing as it can get. You meet every character introduced as they move toward their death, or avoid it, and the Grim Reaper Jack taking them to judgment. True to the dark outlook, most of the characters end up in hell, with all of the disturbing ideas possible that your imagination coming true to the nicest, kindest, and sometimes most innocent of characters. Whether you are following Pinar, an unborn child awaiting his chance to enter heaven from hell once he is old enough, or following a longtime resident of hell like Silverblue, you see the horror that hell brings and all the devices it uses to live up to its name. Not every resident of hell is truly evil. Most live in the necropolis just biding their days trying to avoid death in the afterlife at the hands of either the monsters of hell like the Umber Dogs, the dark residents such as the Nams, war veterans who committed every crime imaginable, and every other psychopathic killer, or most dangerously of all, the sin of which Jack is wrath. He is the kindest of the lot, the most sympathetic sin, and it is not hard for him to be so. Gluttony is made up of a cannibal husband and wife sharing one body. Lust is a serial diddler and killer drip. Greed is a mutilated cult leader. Sloth is the ground and hell itself, unable to get rest. The plot of Jack revolves around small stories involving the deaths of many different characters, from a doctor researching cancer to the victims of killers. Occasionally a larger piece of a major narrative will take place, such as the different sins of hell causing accidents back on Earth, towards some greater and yet unknown end. On these and many other occasions, Jack will work with angels such as Reckoning, Central, and Farrago, all who try to help him with saving souls. The most interesting stories, however, are those of damned souls redeeming themselves, such as Finar helping an empty shell called Bonavin, and a shade called Addie find happiness, or Clip and Lita restoring Drip to his former self, accidentally of course. Silverblue's arc is one of the most disturbing and at the same time the most redeeming, as it shows the start of souls redeeming themselves in the story. You will either love Jack or hate it, it's up to you to decide. Alright, you got a little bit further than I did in the story. Anyway, Zerky says, "Read Jack. Zerky was the one that kicked off the article. Her favorite arc is probably the one with Silverblue looping a day in hell over and over again. Zerky has a soft spot for Groundhog Day loops, as long as they're not like the Endless Eight. The current arc, Megan's Run, is also another favorite. The idea of a bunch of people missing their chance to die and then being able to live as Type 3 immortals is a fun one. It could probably work in a comic if it's done right. Also, is Zerky the only one who prefers the art in the guest strips far more the art in the main comic?" Alright, also somebody that got a little bit further ahead than me. Shadsy, posting one that contains spoilers, we don't care about spoilers here, says, "There is a thread. After reading about it here in TV Tropes and reading a bit about it on the Bad Webcomics wiki, I got curious and read a bunch of it last night, up past the Arloest restaurant arc. Somewhere after there, say, hey, fellas. Thoughts on it for me are mixed. On one hand, I can see why it's on the Bad Webcomics wiki, and yet I think it has some good points. First, art. Personally, I prefer more realistic animals and furries over the toon style, but I won't hold the toon style against the artists. I think there is a place for violent cartoon animals. Laughs. However, these first few arcs, the artwork needs some serious cleanup. I saw a lot of background smuts. I also tend to like characters that have defined noses. I was also a bit annoyed at not being able to tell who is what species. I had to read the Tropes character page to realize that Farrago was a ferret. I thought she was a panda skunk hybrid. I also couldn't tell that those who stumped wings behind her when she was introduced. It looked like her hair to me, red and feathers in her hair, because she was drawn so flatly. It took another panel to show her from the back and someone talking about her wings to make me realize she was a broken angel. I saw a few later arc pages from links to the page of the comic here and saw the art becoming a bit cleaner. I still wish the furs were more realistic, but that may just be a personal preference. The storyline, clarity. I need it. I suppose it's explained later, but I would have been nice to know from early on. Why is Finar in hell? I mean, I guess he's a punishment for his mother or whatever she did, but it still doesn't make sense to me. Maybe I'm blessed, however, by having read someone's correction comic on DA, linked from the Bad Webcomics wiki, that depicted Finar as a lonely child who did a refusing paradise and a you are worth hell because he wanted to be with his mommy, no matter what. The correction was much more heartwarming in my opinion, and it actually made sense. Arloest arc was even worse. Okay, so she has the power to tell the future and plays it like it's going to be some grand heroic sacrifice on her part to warn the party of 4 of their deaths. Yet nowhere do we see her making a deal with Jack over it, or being forbidden to use her power for this specific purpose. There's no explanation of the mechanic of the deal. Bro, did you read it? She didn't make a deal with Jack, she made a deal with Drip. Like, come on, bro. Anyway, the rest of the review. Which drives me nuts, especially considering the ending. I wanted to storm the gates of hell to rescue her. That downer ending also made no sense, considering at least one hope spot is one of the earlier story arcs, and the implication that people escape hell by realizing the riddle of their sin. Damn. The author needs to watch some Haibane Renmei? Haibane Renmei? I don't know what that is. Is that like an old anime? Let me know if it's any good. He'd wind up writing this kind of thing better. He was expecting some kind of earn your happy ending scene that Alois, realizing that her need to let go of control and that she did a heroic sacrifice to save others' lives, exchanging her soul for theirs in what are, again, unexplained mechanics. But no, I don't know. There's actually quite a lot of interesting things going on with this comic. I find Grim Reapers inherently interesting characters. The karmic justice stuff is fun to read for the really morally horrible characters, but I can forgive the way some controversial issues are handled. Some of the story is more plot holes than cartoon cheese. Say, me and the fellas tonight, we're gonna go rob the bank. Yeah, see? You know what I'm saying? We're gonna get a whopping $100 from the bank. I'm sorry, I'm gonna start talking like a 50s gangster now. That was a lot, but why not one more? Betty Smith says, well, yes, it's a dark drama, but I think the best part about Jack is the way it's been crafted. The perfect storyline, fine characterization, subtle design, and timely updates. There's everything that makes it good enough, so I agree with you. These frickin' liberals are turning the frogs gay. You guys like my Alex Jones? I've been told my Alex Jones is pretty good. Anyway, the general reception to this one seems pretty mixed. I do think the extremely dark nature of it can turn people off, but I mean, it is set in hell, mostly, so I don't know what you were expecting. But I think there's a bit more to it than blood and tits, you know? It was a gruesome journey, but it wasn't agonizing to get through like something like Muno or June. That was torture. Well, why don't we do some praises and pain points, huh? Praise 1. It's finished. Like, dude, holy shit, a finished webcomic that is finished, like complete, done, finished? How? How does one have such power? Anyone who actually has completed a webcomic is a legend in my eyes. Like, wow. I'm not kidding, like, there are so many unfinished webcomics, it's ridiculous. Alright, praise 2. Some of the stories are actually quite engaging, like Silver Blue's Time Loop and Angry Brian. They actually go beyond just general shock value and are elevated into something more. I mean, it's still a little cringy being so edgy when you cast as a bunch of furries. Something about furries being edgy is off-putting, but there's more to it than that, you know? Praise 3. The art does, in fact, improve a lot over time. The early chapters are rough, and not just the art, the panel layout, and everything, but we reach what I'd consider a semi-professional level by the end of it. Pain points? Alright, 1. It's an edgelord furry comic. Despite my praise saying that there's a bit more to it than shock value, some of it is really overdone to the point of being comical. There are some things that go down in this comic that might put my channel at risk of a strike for explaining. Like, really? So, yeah, a little too edgy for me, bro. 2. The earlier chapters' lower quality artwork might immediately put off newer readers, which is always a shame in webcomics because part of the appeal, in my opinion, is seeing the creators grow and improve with it. But the earlier arcs are rough, dude. Like, they're pretty damn rough. 3. It's a furry comic. I know I already said that, but there are a lot of people that will dismiss something like this just because it's furries. Personally, I don't care, but others might. Not even opening it up and just looking at the cover page might make some people go, nah, not for me. Although the furries might love it. It seems very popular in furry communities, so let's wrap this one up. So, that was Jack, an infamous webcomic about a Grim Reaper rabbit and his journey to redemption across hell and earth. It was certainly better than I anticipated, looking back on my initial first impressions from the webcomics iceberg. Did you guys read it? What did you think? And if there's enough demand, I may revisit this story someday and read more of it. As for now, shout out to the patrons. If you want your comic reviewed, as in made by you, send it to deviantartsubmissions@gmail.com or send anything else you want there. Join the community in the Discord, linked in the description. Like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you next time. We're looking at zoophobia for the next episode of Infamous Webcomics, so stay tuned for that. Anyway, thanks for watching.